Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of people write to me asking where is this coming from. This is not coming from me by any means. My role is to give this away. This is coming from everyone and everything. It's coming from everywhere. So how do you gift this somehow? It's a strange thing. Energy in general. It's a strange thing. This specific energy as well. Like, what is it? Why now? Is it something in us? Is it something happening at this time in the world? You know, like we've been using music for a long time, for example. So what is it about sound and vibration that seems to be bringing people in depth? So there could be some simple explanations of this energy, and a lot of this can actually be explained through science. There's so much science, sometimes weird, strange science, but we're learning so much about the body, the mind, the brain, spirit, all undergoing transformations together. But to start out from a spiritual awakening perspective, I think there would be a lot of useful things for you to pick up on in a way that maybe you can relate to this. I would like to do that you can relate to this in a personal way. So you could own it, you know, that this is just as much yours as anyone else's. A lot of trainings happen in a way that a lot of people are just asking for permission. Is this okay for me? Am I good enough? Do I have enough permissibility? Do I have enough to share this with others? I find a question like that interesting. And I want to like outline why in some interesting, strange ways. So yeah, I'm from the Philippines. I'm 46 years old now. Spirituality wasn't something that I ever did. I never did spiritual things when I was younger. It just happened to me in a way. It came to me through crisis primarily. I was depressed. I was asking a lot of questions about what's the point? Why are we here? What are we doing here? What's the point? So I was led. I think I heard voices that spoke this general message that something is bigger. So much bigger than we know. So my spiritual awakening actually happened in the US. I was in California in 2002. And I was in this depression asking a lot of questions. Nothing was making sense. And something happened that changed my life forever. I basically woke up one morning and I heard this voice that said, there's someone outside and he is looking for you. And who would believe that kind of thing? You know, that level of synchronicity just doesn't exist. And I was this corporate, burnt out yuppie who was going through a dark night of the soul. So I went outside anyway, decided to trust it. Trust is a big word in this journey. And when I went outside, I actually did meet this strange Mexican man who was just there, and he was looking for me. That's according to him anyway. He said I was waiting. So we went up this mountain, and he told me about my whole life. He told me about my childhood. He told me about what was happening to me at that time. He told me about what was to come. And numerous times I asked him, like, who are you? What are we doing? What's happening here? His only answer was like, I'm you. Like we're one person. It took me a long time to understand what that meant. But But he showed me something basic that belongs to the spirit. And it's the definition of what healing is. Like, what does it really mean to heal? I think to be healed is to be seen as you truly are. He had this ability to look at me straight into my eyes, and it was like he could see my time. It's a very strange thing to say, like, what does it mean to be seen as your time? It's like he could see me in a way that he could see my past and my future, and how all the choices that I was making at that very moment of being seen had a way of spreading across yesterday and tomorrow. Like today, right now, is everything else. I grew up with a lot of fear and anxiety. I was abused when I was young within family, and I was always really small, like super small, super thin. And in school, I was bullied like a lot. And I guess I absorbed a lot of this from my father, who experienced his own trauma. He basically was shot when he was like 3 years old, and someone dropped a gun during World War II, and the bullet entered here and exited there. So he grew up with a glass eye. He had one eye. And he grew up with a lot of shame and guilt and fear, and somehow this was passed on. I used to be really scared of people. Like I couldn't talk to people. I had no power to sit with anyone. Every time I was with a person, I would run away. But whilst I was all of this, at the same time, even though I was always being attacked and projected upon, being abused, there was something about my body and my mind that had the ability to absorb like all of this pain, as if I knew that it was petty. Like a lot of this was nothing. It was petty. It's bullshit. It's not. It didn't mean anything, So there was something about my metabolism. There was something about my body type that seemed, when I was young, like it was weak. Like I was always the smallest person in the room, and I always like wanted to run away from everything. Yet at the same time, I had this superpower to just absorb as much pain and as much negative energy from others in a way that it didn't actually do much inside my system. So there's this huge paradox there. So when I had this meeting with a Mexican stranger it was in California, around the LA area, in what's called the San Gabriel Mountains. It was almost like all of the pieces came together. All of the separate pieces that never made sense. It was part of just chaos, and this chaos. It almost seemed like everything was just one story. Like everything had to happen for a reason. And it's like the story of the whole universe, and the story of me, and the story of all things. I don't know. It just felt like I went into some kind of trance. And the reason why I did it, people ask me, why did you do it? Why did you walk away from the world? Why did you just step away from everything? I went to the biggest schools in the Philippines. I owned companies, and one day I had no money. I was wearing a pair of shorts. I had a sarong on and a pair of slippers. I didn't even have a shirt on. I basically just walked away. I literally just walked away. And I thought I was going to take a walk, but I just kept walking and I just never went back. So people ask me, why did you do it? The biggest part had something to do with what the Mexican told me. That he told me that there was an old mother, like an old grandmother, and she was searching like for us. She was inside of us, and she was calling us to come to her. And so I started to see this old grandmother everywhere. I could see her in my dreams, and it's almost like she started to become everyone I was talking to, as if all the conversations were just part of one long continuous conversation. So when I would hear something spoken by one, it seems like everyone else kept continuing the same conversation. I was talking about some kind of story about the earth, that the earth was changing, and yet the story was really old. Like the story was really, really old. So it just, I guess all the messages hit like a peak point, and I just could not listen to it. So I walked away. I just walked away. So I was walking away for a couple of hours, but like I just kept walking. And what seems to many people like this would be the hardest thing. Like this sounds like the worst thing, the hardest thing, to leave without money, without food, without even like a shirt on your back. It almost felt like it was the easiest thing to just walk away. A lot of people probably judged me because I didn't tell my parents, and I just got lost. People didn't know if I was alive for many years. So people would see my back as if I was walking away, rather than see me walking towards. I believe that we're all hearing this voice. We just don't know how to listen to it. It's not a personal or even an archetypal voice only. Spirit needs to speak to us through symbols and icons and images, but the voice is a vibration. It's like a sound. The sound is in our body. The sound is, that's a gecko, by the way, if you can hear that. The sound is in the earth, as if the earth itself was a song, and the body itself is a song. So I walked away. I walked for about a year. I slept where I needed to sleep. I was invited to eat when it was time. I just walked across maybe one of the biggest islands in Asia. It's called Mindanao. It's in the Philippines. And I found bits and pieces of the puzzle. There were bits and pieces of the story of the earth, the story of the human, the story of language, the story of culture, the story of the mind. I think the story is embedded everywhere. You just need to, I think a huge part of it is freeing up your body and your psychic energy so that you could see the interconnections. And when we're loaded, when we're stuck, and when we're filled up with all of these attachments, you won't see that story. You're going to be bound up, too bound up that you won't see the story. But when you get disentangled enough, you somehow see how the parts intertwine. And all I saw was that there was this optimism, that in the face of all this despair that I was feeling, this desperation, this depression, what I saw was there's this hope, there's this positivity, like there's a chance, basically. So I was given these instructions that I needed to find some island that I was seeing inside my mind, my dreams. So I left for another island in the Philippines called Palawan, and it was really quite interesting. When the Mexican stranger introduced the mother, he said her name is Kali, and my name is Pai. And the name of the island that I found was Kalipai. And that was the word for happiness in Filipino. So I basically lived there for 2 years. The Philippines is the second largest producer of coconuts on the planet. And it's also the highest source of electricity in all known foods in the world. So I'm basically a highly addictive person. I love food. I'm very emotional. So this would have been the last thing that I would think about, to live in a mono diet, which is to eat just one kind of food. I was reading up on these texts about these breatharians who don't eat food anymore, don't drink water anymore. So I was interested in this ascension work, this possibility of raising vibration from inside. Now, I don't like to dance. I don't like dancing. My sister is a famous dancer in the Philippines, so I didn't know what to expect. I was given the instructions by Spirit, stay here until the conditions were met. So I didn't know if maybe my body would just float into nothing, or I would die, or I would gather superpowers or something. The first year of staying as a hermit without contact with other human beings is quite intense. I can't describe it to you. It's like going on a detox, when you quit something, like a vice, for example. People quit smoking, try to get off alcohol. There are these withdrawal symptoms. What happened to me was I felt like I was puking out the world of illusion. It was so hard. It was really difficult. I had blood coming out of parts of my body that, like my eyes, my ears, my skin. It was like I couldn't hold this pain that was like physicalized in my system. So I entered into a really dark night. I really went deep into a letting go. And slowly, like it happened, light happened. It was in the beginning not so noticeable, but it was like a pinprick. I could see there's something that would come out of this. So being like a weak-ish person, I really had to face the fear. When you're in the city, when you need a source of energy, let's say you're tired, you're depressed, you're lonely, you could always go to the ATM machine and draw money out, and you can always go to the store and buy food, or you can always log on to the internet, call your mom. But when you're stuck inside this situation where you can't go to anyone, there's nothing's for sale. And even if you had a lot of money, you can't buy anything. Then, what do you do? So I was stuck in this situation where what do I do now? I hate it here. It's so hard being alone, and I'm hungry and I'm thirsty, and the only source of food is up there. And I don't know if you've ever climbed a coconut tree before. So especially if you're going through this really low point, it was, it's like every single day I had to keep doing it. And it was so difficult, but it was so good. All the parts of me that were so weak had to go through, like a very authentic mode of prayer. I had to really face death. It's like my fear of going hungry had to fight with my fear of heights. So I had to keep climbing up every day, and it was quite an experience. So I grew from all those. I wasn't expecting really so much would come, even though a lot of the message that were coming through was speaking some grandiose visions. I was minding my own business one morning. I was in a hammock, and I was just, being lazy, swinging. When I heard this voice, and it said, the mother and I are now one. And then my body just started to move. My body just started to move on its own, like it was another person altogether. It's like I lost control of my body. And then there was a particular sense of power along with synchronicity. So I was kind of freaked out, but at the same time, I was fascinated, because it felt like I knew what was happening right before it happened. Like something was in rewind, and I knew that this was supposed to happen a second before it happened. So there was a sequence of knowing before time everything that was happening. So I let it be. And then I heard the words, it began in Africa. And then the whole world just really exploded on me. Like the whole thing became one large sound, and the sound was coming from my body. And suddenly I found myself dancing on the beach. And then I was in this, I don't know, I didn't know that that much power could flow through a single human being. There's so much energy coursing through me that I basically experienced my mind just jump out of my head. And then I was just watching this thing underneath dancing with so much power, and I didn't know what it was because I wasn't me anymore. I was like a cosmic baby that just got here without the ability to conceptualize anything. So I was just looking at everything, taking it all in, looking at the sand, the water, the person, not knowing what sand, water, or person, or earth meant. So I stayed there, like I was inside my body. I was doing these really wild movements, like juggling things with my body, doing somersaults with this kind of martial artsy dance thing that seemed to mean something. I literally had to remember my way back into my person, to remember memory, remember details, so that I could become my ego again. And I really had to try my best to go back into a three-dimensional reality. And then I was just there. I literally just had this awareness that something just happened. And that was huge. It was like an affirmation that all of the intuition or trust that I put into this was justified, because I had burned my bridges. I literally just walked away, and I was guilty. I felt like, wow, I left my mom. My mom's probably suffering right now. She doesn't know what happened. And my dad died when I was in the island. So, like this is something important. Somehow this is something, this needed to happen. So I stayed there for about a year more, and there were more experiences. I was given more guidances. The island for me was like a school. It was like a school of energy. I never learned anything from anyone. This thing really just downloaded itself so that this would move, and I'd see colors, and then that would happen, so that when two people arrived on the island lost, looking to find their way, and like me, finding it exactly there, when I touched people's bodies, that was it. The same energy that was coursing through me started to happen to them. And that was amazing. It's like, I didn't learn this from anyone, and I didn't teach them anything. This energy knew what to do, so that as I touched them, they too exhibited the phenomenon. So I don't want to get stuck with the idea that this is about the body moving on its own, or that energy flows through you. Be focused on the fact that this is a dimensionality. This has something to do with time. Like I would ask you this question now, like, what is time? Is it just this line that is a sequence of points that organizes events? What is time when you're sleeping? What is time before you were born? What is time after you die? What is time when you dream? What is time when you go into the psychedelic journey? What is time in the spiritual experience? What is inception time? What is interdimensional time? And are you allowed to enter that, where a day is not a day anymore? And what is here is not just what is here. It doesn't take that much. It's not that much that separates us between here and there. And I think we really just found an opening. So to make that long story short, the energy just kept, but it knew what it was doing. It wasn't me. It's Earth. It needs somehow some modes of transference or a story or a series of events that allows this to be chosen, co-created, experienced. But don't see it as something we do. See it as an intelligence. It knows what it's doing. We sometimes think that objects don't have intelligence, thoughts don't have intelligence. Yet many words that you speak are a lot older than you, and they're just using you as a vehicle to have continuity. So energies unto themselves can have intelligences. So what I had to go through was to watch this transfer or move through different countries, like in Asia, in East Asia, South Asia, across the Americas, across Europe, across Africa. I basically held and trained about 20,000 people in the last 16, 17 years. And I haven't been teaching so much the last years. So I've seen the state. I've seen what could happen when people go there, what you might call source, the universe, cosmic experience, the quantum reality. You name it, you can go there. What I want to give to you today is this is ours. This is not hard. I've seen small children do it. They literally would just go there, and then they would hold the energy, hold others, and then people would go there. It just needs to be trusted and be allowed contextualization. And then when you meet it, in whatever way, you heard something, your intuition spoke to you, it doesn't take that much. So in the Philippines, when this began, how it would happen is in the space of an hour, like the space would open and the energy would come, people would heal each other, people would lay down and a healing would happen, and then they would go home. The first news article that was written about this was everybody can be a healer. So the whole room becomes one. We're suffering with this experience of walking into many rooms and the rooms are separate. Yet deep down, we know that it's one. So I began with my story to give a somewhat interesting explanation of what this is. Were you to die, and if time doesn't exist as an absolute thing, if it's relative, that means time is an illusion. In a way, in a timeline, you've already died and you haven't been born yet you try to keep going back into time to experience certain points. That's not actually linear. It's spread across a whole field of possibilities, and you would go back to moments like these just to look at your notes. What would happen were you to die? Would everything stop, or would you still be there? Would there still be a consciousness? What would happen to that consciousness? It would simply go into a dimensionality of time that perceives the construct from beginning to end and everything in between, not in a linear way. So when I spoke about this thing about me that's weak, that was about weakness and fear, and yet having the ability to trust, there's something about letting go and surrendering that allows you to absorb everything that the world is projecting. Everyone's projecting it. No one wants to own it. No one takes responsibility. It's like you wake up and life is like war. You have to go to war again. You have to go to battle. You have to fight, and everyone's trying to win. I lived in the US as an exchange student, when I was 16. So I had a close look in terms of what it is like to live there where you are now. And it's like that. It's like going to war. It's like competing. It's always this competition. It's always like you have to win. And in school, in high school, you can't be this loser. What I find interesting is when you study the whole process that allows so much power to come through you, I really think humans have it the other way around. In some ways, the more you lose, the more you win. But we're not allowed to let go. We're not allowed to not fight. So rare is the time when we actually open up the body and the mind in a way that just absorbs what seems scary, which no one wants. It's like the scariest thing to be projected upon, to be judged, to be abused, to be hit. But what does it mean to see that all of this is petty? It's all an illusion. And when you have the ability to convert darkness into light from within, would that not possibly be the greatest gift that stops this chain of blame and guilt and takes ownership over what is not new? There's something very old about that's being passed on. There's something ancient about that's being passed on. And when you have the ability to lay down and allow that to come through, basically, the experience is something like becoming the earth. It's like becoming the earth. So there's a reason why a lot of people share that this experience is like going into like the womb. Like, what is the womb anyway? Is it like a place in the mother's belly? Maybe that's a literalization, but what could your consciousness have looked like? How were you seeing the world when you were there, when you were inside the womb? Within that energy bubble, there's creation at work. And it's not just you. This bubble isn't just you. Like, how are you even making things up? How are you making the universe? How are you constructing a reality? How are you creating a planet? And how are you storing it inside each and every body that you inhabit? These memories are there. They exist in every cell, in every ontological thing. And it's a vibration that allows that remembrance to come. So we seem to use music in the process. But it's not music. You are made of vibrations. And going back to this understanding that to be healed is to be seen, were you to be seen as what you are, and if you are a universe, what would be the language that is able to let this be received? So somehow sound and vibration has been traveling for a long time. We've produced a vibration, this vibration is traveling. What we're learning is how this could be received. So in any moment, there is trust. In any particular moment where you are allowed to open, you would receive it. And this would surprise you. This is supposed to surprise you. That is the game. That is the theater. That's the movie. That your sense of smallness is important. That shatters ego, that allows for the opposite, which is bigness. The energy is big. Our ego is small. Our fear is small. So when we work with that fear and that, feeling small in a humble and simple way, it's the energy that takes over you, that is a part of you that lives, that just breathes, that moves. And it's you don't need to get attached to the phenomena. It's not really about, like power seemingly emanating from you. It could happen in simple ways where you simply recognize, okay, I simply know what I know, and I will be led without attachments, without having to get addicted to particular phenomena or patterns that I can see happening in others that I want to keep happening inside myself. Something could just go into a renewal. And I think this is what's happening that's interesting now. We have to be open to the intelligence that might show up differently, even in your own space that may not have been so seen and felt before. That is the level of ownership and responsibility you could carry with this. So I spoke a little bit in a way, but in a way this maybe encompasses a lot of where this is coming from. There's so much that could be shared in relation to what's happening, especially in the brain. The brain is changing. Our brains are super changing. The autonomic nervous system is changing. The circadian rhythms are changing. The chemicals, the neurotransmitters, the hormones sending signals that allow for synaptic connectivity is shifting in a way that suddenly we're fired up, we're electrified, and there are many understandings of the changes that are happening in the brain regions. I don't feel this is the right place to do that because it takes days, weeks, and months to unravel the neurology, especially that is reshaping, something that took a long time to program, not just in your life. Our neocortex, our reptilian brain, our limbic system, they're old. They hold old historicity. It's enough to enjoy and to watch the changes because you are kind of beyond the physical anyway. You would be interested in the brain and in the central nervous system if you feel you would like to do like a seasoned therapy with this, like you really want to systematize this. And a lot of the reason why we hold so much of that system is we are working with schools, we're working with doctors, we're working with people in the system who require the science. But if you don't require that, it's more than enough to just understand there is a neurology of trust and a neurology of fear. Maybe go map that a little bit, just so we can go into a bit of framework. So there's this, sorry. There's this double helix in the body that can be easily drawn as a double relationship between electricity, what's called electricity and magnetism. And how we might see this is there are brain states that are traceable, delta, theta, alpha, beta. The interesting thing is when you go higher than beta, say you go upper gamma or high oscillating frequencies, magnetism starts to exhibit the properties of electricity. Okay, so these are neural oscillations, they're brain waves. Like delta would be slower, theta would be faster, alpha, beta. He's getting faster and faster. But in the normative sense, the faster waves are hiding at the lower part of the body. And when we're controlling, when we're stuck in our heads, this is where we operate from. So in a way, what we're trying to understand is how does magnetism, which in a way is the mind, how does it drop? Because what we've been observing globally is when systems of interpretation and systems in control drop, electricity rises in the body. Electricity is flow. And it's very interesting to watch and to see what that electricity does. There would be the sensory experience, there would be the kinesthetic experience, there would be the visual experience. Suddenly you start seeing things you know, people talk about colors they've never seen before, or you enter into a kind of dream, you know, that talks about the story of all stories. So people talk about the story of the earth. I became the earth, or I went back to the beginning of the earth. It's really interesting what can happen in an hour or an hour and a half, actually. And that's what you might be called to do, to construct a journey into deep time or deep history within an hour and an hour and a half. It could be with your mom, could be with your child, it could be with, you know, there are ways to do this now. So what you want to study is how to allow magnetism to drop and electricity to rise. You don't need to use music per se. There's a way in which your own words, your language could allow for something to die, even as something is birthed. You know, you could speak in a way that allows resistance and fear to descend, and allow inspiration and power, insight to arise. In general, this is the trick. You are learning how to hold the masculine and the feminine, and vibrationally, it's very, very slow and very, very fast together. So were you to define what is the trance, what does it mean to go into a shamanic state? This is all. This is it. It's the ability to hold death and birth at the same time, recognizing that they are one and in the same thing. You can expand this conversation on and on. Wherever you look at, whether it be the nature of language, the nature of the brain, the nature of the biological body, the nature of matter, you would see the same principles. And somehow change and transformation takes place when both elements meet. And the reason why we're not experiencing this is we live in a world that's very high in magnetism and has really lowered our feminine, the electrical inside of us. So something happens when you drop magnetism, something happens to time. Suddenly time starts to expand. It feels like a day, or an hour is not an hour. And these are mechanisms in the body. You can actually just describe these very, very simply, that this is the sympathetic nervous system. If you know what the sympathetic nervous system is, it's fight or flight. And the parasympathetic nervous system is trust. So every time you expand something, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And when you allow something to let go, you let go of the sympathetic nervous system. All of these are simply vibrations. They're wired across your brain, your heart speaks a lot. Your breath holds a lot of this awareness. And when you go into these interesting moments when the sympathetic and parasympathetic co-activate with each other, and let me talk about those 4 instances when they co-activate with each other. There are 4 instances when they're both on at the same time. One example is when people go into psychedelic journeys. There's a co-activation between the sympathetic and parasympathetic, because a psychedelic is a combination of a stimulant and a depressant. In the spiritual awakening, these also awaken at the same time. They also co-activate in the REM state when we dream. And then the other time it tends to happen is when we experience the life review during the near death. Okay, when people die, almost die, and come back to talk about what happens, they experience what's called a life review. So when you study all of these together, and it's important and exciting that they have this neurological construct that supports what's taking place. When you go into the psychedelic journey, when you have a spiritual awakening, a really authentic one, when you dream, and when you experience the life review in the near death, what's the commonality? The commonality is something expands, and that is basically time. Time perception is a science that talks or thinks about how time changes when you let's say drink something, or when you hear a certain vibration, or I don't know, something happens that. So when you dream, time changes. And when you die, people say your whole life will flash before your very eyes in just one moment. And when you go into a psychedelic journey, like a few hours can become like a universe. And when you have a spiritual awakening, very often in the process of inner dance, people say that that was not a day. It felt like I went to the beginning of everything, and I had to make my way back here. So what we're giving and altering is time. When you give this feeling to people, what you're giving people is time. And one of the traumas and pain, one of the illusions people hold is there's not enough time. The time is limited, the time is a line. But how you're able to hold this, and music and vibration is one of the most powerful ways of altering time, especially if people are laying down in a position that allows them to receive time. What you're giving people is the question, how old are you? How long have you been here? How long have you been doing this again and again and again? And if you can speak that vibrationally, they will, and they might go there. You just need to be open, and maybe even you might go there. So that could be that's not just a spiritual concept. The brain can be altered to receive time, to perceive time. The body could be touched. The body could be spoken to in a way that it remembers its age. You know, how old are you? Are you 40? Are you 50? Are you 30? Or are you what you are? You know, just because it's so rare that this is asked, we're never asked, and we don't become it. But going back to this principle, to be seen is to be healed. If you're seen as that, then maybe you are. You could be, and maybe you could speak this to others. And imagine if this is spoken to a child, instead of like, no, you're 2 years old. No, you're 3. Maybe the child could be spoken to. No, you're a universe. You're from where you just came from, and you're not just having to forget. Can you imagine what that would have done, were it be that there was an awareness there before language and memory and personality and identity and ego? Okay, so that could be the intro. Doesn't have to be long, giving you guys more space for questions and the experience. I created a playlist for you guys, and I sometimes play things live, but I feel like it would be good for there to just be focused, and whatever feedbacks could come through Sigrid and Sandra later. So let's open the mic and see if you guys have any interesting thoughts or questions.
Thank you a lot, Pai, for all the wisdom, all your experience, all the transmission of that, getting deeper and deeper into this, opening up ourselves to be open to that information. And now I'd like to invite whoever feels like asking a question from the heart in terms of understanding related to the experiences you had so far. So please come in front of the camera just to have the chance to ask and then to. So you can just introduce.
Hi, Pi. My name is Andrew. Can you hear me well? So I was listening to your story, and question came into my mind. I'm always longing on finding my purpose, a divine purpose, something that I'm here to do. And I caught myself also on the thought that, is it my ego asking for that, to find that purpose? And so I'm between two sides. I have a beautiful family. I live in a beautiful town. I have everything on the level of human level, but internally there's something almost missing. And so I want you to maybe give an advice.
Okay. There's so many answers or ideas around this. Let me give you, for me, what is the most salient, or maybe if you kept asking this question and there's so many pathways, where would you keep ending up if you spent like a year or 100 years asking the same question? When people experience messages or phenomena coming through, let's give the metaphor of dreaming. You know, when you have a dream and the dream seems so profound and important, the question would normally be, what does it mean? What does it mean? You can keep asking that, and there would be so many dreams. And dreams are interesting in a way that they change. It depends on what was happening that comes together in the dream. So in a way, the dream is not stable. So let's say you just kept asking the question, what does it mean? What does it mean? But in a way, the meaning keeps changing, so that when you look at it from far away, it starts to not mean so much. The question that would arise later on would be something else. And I know this because I've seen so many people go into meanings. What does it mean? And then meanings would be meaningful until they become meaningless because there are other meanings. The more empowering question would be, how do we even construct meaning at all? So relating it to what you're asking, like you could ask, and I like it that you're then giving an observation. Am I asking this from ego? I think there's wisdom in that, in asking that. Because you could ask, what is my purpose? But another question, Andrew, would be, how am I even constructing purpose? Is it possible that you are coming from this God, creative life force space, goddess space, where it's actually going to be up to you? So you could either see this from a stable point of view where, okay, you could just decide to be happy right now and be open when things change. Or you could also see that you are in a transition of having created past meanings that held value, and that you might be constructing new meanings that would be something else. So there's some futility in trying to hold on to the philosophical word for purpose is telos. Teleology is the study of final purposes. And having watched humans enter into deep domains, I don't actually think there are purposes. There are no final purposes. Meaning is what we make of it. And that could change today, this minute, tomorrow, next week. What we're being given is the chance to create the experience, and it's going to be up to you how you want to interpret and enjoy it. Because to try to limit something into a purpose doesn't exist in the universe, because there are so many layers, and when you open up to so many experiences, you would just see the plethora. You would shop around and you wouldn't finish, and there's something very hungry in the human that just keeps going and going and going. It's like a bottomless pit. So you may as well kind of stop that whole train this early, and it's like, okay, I'm good. I'm good now. I'm actually okay. So those are two different questions. I think you kind of get it. Like, what does it mean versus how do we even construct meaning at all? It's differentiated by subjectivity, and subjectivity is ego. Objectivity is not. It's to see the world as it truly is. So it's either you see things in the metaphor of a cup that has a liquid. The feminine would be the substance or the liquid. The masculine would be the form, the cup. So a lot of us would be interested in, okay, what is inside? But then the shape of the water is going to be the shape of the cup. So rather than trying to look for the substance, which is super flowing, how are you even constructing the form? I think that's more empowering in the long term. You won't get stuck. Because if you keep asking the question, what does it mean? You will be forever be stuck with looking for signs from outside, and you'll be victimized. But, you know, like, I think what the energy will give us is total responsibility. So that anything that comes, it's like, oh, okay, this is telling me something I accept, and yet I'm open to something else altogether. That would make you a really, really big being, because everything would be a part of you and you'd be a part of everything else. Hope that helps. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, Pi.
Mm.
My name's Sharon. We are so grateful you're here. I have a question, and Sandra and Siegfried taught us in this training that it's possible that you actually found that people can become addicted to the inner dance. And I know through the music, is that the only way? Is it, you know, you don't have the same playlist, or the addiction? Is there, how do you know? How do you go about that?
Yeah, thank you.
That?
Thank you for this. Addiction is still connected to ego. So energetically, we can spiral, and it's beautiful to spiral into chaos, into letting go, into the feminine. The way to combat addiction, because addiction could be always connected to wanting the bliss state, wanting to experience pleasure and bliss, which can lead to avoidances and escapism, shortcutting, bypassing, wanting things easy, fast, big, which is already happening across the world anyway. For me, the opposite of addiction is wisdom. When you become like a child is not really addicted. A child is in wonder. A child is curious. A child really wants to know and is open to learn new things. And what makes us different from children is when we experience something pleasurable, we want it again, and then we want it again, and we want it again. Just like when we experience something uncomfortable, then we want to avoid that. We want to avoid that. And energetically, very often when you're wanting something too much, that's the moment you can't have it. You're just actually wanting it to want it. And then the moment you're afraid of it, that's the moment it keeps coming. So that's in the brain, the body, and the mind, these mechanisms. So I really feel it's really important to become a student of the energy, to learn. And the cure for addiction is philosophy. Philo means love. Sophie means wisdom. And I think we need to deserve our wisdom. So it's about asking deep questions about, like, who are you? What are we? Where are we coming from? The reason why this is the opposite of addiction is that Addiction is a deconstruction. Mainly it destroys patterns, which is good in many instances. When we become rigid, when we want to transform, we need to destroy old patterns. But when we keep going into the energetic deconstruction and we're not learning, what happens is there's an imbalance between the masculine and feminine. So structuring or creativity is really important, and you want to expose yourself to information that allows you to grow. Sometimes that information is going to come from inside you, but because we created this world in a way that parts of you are scattered across, then you want to also allow yourself to receive. So when I speak about this, it's not a generalization. This is coming from having studied the dopaminergic pathways of the brain, which leads to addictive tendencies. A lot of people have heard of what dopamine does. The other addictive chemicals would be epinephrine, more commonly known as adrenaline. And then there are these inhibitory chemicals like acetylcholine. These are the elements that slow down what becomes much too fast. So a lot of facilitators get addicted to the feedback loops that come up when they see that, oh, I can activate the energy and energy can rise up. And they lose the sensibility that sometimes the energy also needs to slow down. So there has to be something that rises up and something needs to fall. And if you learn how to hold the high and the low at the same time, you know, when we're not avoiding so much and when we're not seeking too much, we can bring this into balance. It's almost like it's kind of like being insane. It's kind of crazy to hold the cold and the warm at the same time, and you don't know the difference. It's like, okay, this is nice, this is not so nice, and I don't know the difference anymore. It's like you're not judging. Addiction is still pretty much a dualistic notion of trying to cancel one out and then trying to keep reaching for one other thing as a source of energy. But when you're able to hold all of it in a way that you're okay with what is good and what is not so good, energetically, that can be expressed in music, in the way we contextualize things, the way we language, the way we touch bodies. You energetically hold a space, and everything that you do would emanate from your tools and your expression. So balance is an interesting word. It just is not going to be the definitive balance we're used to thinking about. Balance normally means in between. It's not that in energy. It's actually the extreme of both. Like your ability to be so relaxed and yet so vibrant, so alive yet so detached. You know, so Eastern, so Western, so high, so low, that you remembered, I've been through all of this. I have the wisdom coming from experience, and you know, these are vibrations in the body, and that these vibrations are not addictive, because when you raise the vibration high enough that it gets past the vibrations of wanting, which is normally in beta and lower gamma, when you raise it to high oscillating frequencies, these are neural oscillations inside your brain and inside your body, and you can only experience that by really letting go, really opening up your system down to the cellular level, so that you're not resisting, you're not holding on. What happens is there's a channeling that takes place. There's a vibration in the body that can really slow down. There's a Hindu mythology that explains this really well. For those who do yoga, you know what it means to lay down and spread the arms and close the eyes. It's called Shavasana. Now that position that reclaims the position of the corpse is from Shava. Shava is the corpse. And when Shava fully lets go, that's the only time Shakti or Kali enters the being. It enters Shava because the vibration is so open and is so in the letting go, like surrender phase. So when Shakti enters through, suddenly the body stands up and begins to dance. And this body is now called Shiva. So don't get stuck with the words. These are just representations of vibrations. Shakti is the high oscillating frequencies, what is maybe beyond 30 to 100 hertz, 150 hertz. Normally when we're in beta consciousness, we're at 20 or maybe 30. Like when we're thinking too much, when we're over planning, when we're worrying, we're maybe at 20 to 30 hertz. But when you go beyond that to maybe 50 hertz to 100, 200 even, you oscillate in ways that are not even recognizable normally in the human construct, because it's so high, it's so fast. But what we're learning is you need to be Shava, you need to be totally open. So to experience Shava, the corpse or death, doesn't mean to die literally. It just means to hold simultaneously inside you the slow vibration, that which isn't trying at all, that which is just being. And these exist inside of us. You normally experience it when you go to sleep during what's called slow wave sleep. It's called non-REM 3 state. And when you experience that, like that's the deepest you can go. So we actually go through that every night when we go to sleep. So the energy becomes accessible usually when you slow down willingly or involuntarily. That's when the energy comes through. That's when the energy comes through. That's a space where addiction cannot happen anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just also to clarify where this came from this addictive, as we said, like sequential music very often leads to this pumping up of this known anticipatory pleasure type of experience.
Yeah.
And so some people want to have another session and another session because they just enjoyed it, like saying, okay, I want to have one more enjoyable session. And that's where we said, what's the difference between the sequential music, which is happening to lead into that, and the non-sequential, the inner dance music, which is the overlay or multi-layer going in the highs and in the lows at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, very clear. There's so much that we said about that, but I think people just have to experience it. So the playlist that I sent over would I think do something interesting around this conversation.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hi, Pi. I'm Brianna. I wasn't planning to ask a question, but and I don't really know how to ask it, and I don't want to take I'm a little nervous because I have never talked about this out loud. Because I've never felt like anyone could help me make sense of it. So I'll give you a little context without taking too much time, but you were talking about dreams and death and feelings and following them. So about like 10 months ago, I had a dream where I felt one of my loved ones. Like it was the only time I had a dream where I woke up and someone had died in that dream who was alive in real life. Felt it more than I've ever felt a dream or anything. And then this past September, I was supposed to go to school. I was very excited. I waited like months to go, and I woke up and I was like, I didn't go. And I didn't know why. And I was like, I'm not going to go. And then that afternoon, I was going into my room, and it was my father. He was in the next room sleeping. And I was about to like go do something, and I stopped like mid stride, and I was like, and I went into his room, and he had passed away. So I just was trying to understand, like, and I'm not sad. It's hard for me I've never told anyone because I felt crazy. Like how that's all connected. And I don't feel a need to like understand my dreams and act on them or read things. But I understand that there's a connection there that kind of came through me. So I was just curious about it.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Brianna. There's a knowing before knowing, and you're talking about it now. Sometimes people call it precognition, and it's a very complex topic because there would be these implications of am I involved in this? What is the connection? Am I part cause? Am I, like what is that? There's this awareness that's intuitive, and there's a name for it, and it's a scientific term. It's called retrocausality. So the answer is actually quite beautiful. It's when the answers come before the questions even come up. Retrocausality is a part of the mind, the body, and the universe where effects precede the cause. So talking about electricity and magnetism, for example, when magnetism is high, time is also more. So the part of the universe where magnetism is the highest is the black hole. If you go into a black hole, a second on Earth becomes 1,000 years in the black hole. There are many movies to talk about this possibility. The Christopher Nolan ones especially go into this. Now, this is part of us. There's something in our minds and our bodies that can enter the black hole, which can go into what's called the life of you. I'm always sensitive and interested in the subject of death because for me, I've gone through my own deaths and have come back and seen what it's like. And the experience is fascinating. It's almost like, and this is also supported by the description of many others, and this could help you with your own grieving process. When you die, something will happen. It doesn't stop. It doesn't actually stop. It's actually just the beginning. They say that everything outside of you goes inside, and then you start to see yourself in a way that you've never seen before. Instead of you seeing yourself, it would be the reversal. This is what retrocausality means in death. Normally, you see yourself by seeing others around you. But when you die, and this is what happens to our mothers and fathers, it's what happens to us, you will see yourself as everyone ever saw you. And you're not just talking about people, not just your mother, your father, your sister, brother, your daughter, your son. What would happen is even the objects would be looking at you. It's basically called like an inloading process of what had been offloaded. So at the moment of birth, you need to project parts of yourself outside of you so that you're not just you anymore. You extend your mind into the objects, the people, the space. But when you die, there's an inloading where everything that you ever projected comes back. And you don't live in time anymore. You can go back and forth. You can review any of it. Like your father, when he died, he could go back and forth from the beginning up to the end in all of its variations. And how long does he have to do that? It's a millisecond and it's eternity. He can do it forever and he can do it in a second, and it's all there, which means this is our life. At any moment, you're actually living inside this womb space of possibility, this oceanic set of experiences where every version of today exists in infinite variations. So for someone like you who had this experience, this strong experience, this is you experiencing retrocausality. It's you basically experiencing time going backwards. It means that you pass through like a veil and you you saw through it. And if you develop this and you won't be scared of this, this is actually the energy itself. The energy is the ability to become the answer before the question. If this came through a strong and difficult experience like death, that's a release. That's basically a part of you dying before you died. And if you accept that, then a part of you gives birth, and our people live in us anyway. And it's like the blessings come before we even ask for it, but sometimes it needs to come first through like a release. And I know you when you say, okay, this is not coming from sadness, it's coming from a process. You know, it's just a process. And you even asking this now, having the courage of talking about it in public, it's actually you just saying, oh, okay, it's just time. And it's
Thank you so much.
You know, you're co-creating it just as much as I am. So bringing up this question brings it up for everyone who's hearing it right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, bye. My name is Christina. Thank you so much for honoring us today. And my question to you would be, can we activate people without them knowing about this energy? It's like yesterday I was at the restaurant with some friends, and some people would stay in front of me, and I would just like, I would feel like a rush of energy coming through my hand. And then just like I would move my hand without me being, just like it was a rush of energy through my hands moving through them.
Yeah, totally. So imagine like a pot, and then you put water into that pot, and then you start putting ingredients like onions and garlic and carrots and like whatever ingredients. Energy being a combination of vibrations is like a soup. And when you start to create that soup, and it becomes like this dynamic soup, when you go to places, people will experience that soup. So we can't just see this as a modality or an activity, like something we do based on the law of resonance. If you start combining things inside you, you will emanate this, you will become it. And these experiences, like what you just described, these are like beautiful stories speaking that you're just there. You're just there, you know. So you walk into a room and you heal the room just by being there, and that's resonance. That should be such a big insight already. Sometimes when we move our hands, these are just they're just, you don't even need to do it. Like a lot of people realize there's a way we can project light. We normally think that we're receiving light. When you open your eyes and when you're looking at something, you're receiving photons of light. But then when you go into the experience you just described, it's almost like there's this witness, something's watching from behind your head that seems to help co-create the process. For you to have been able to do the thing that you were able to experience yesterday, you had to have been in another dimensionality that's not really just here. When you conduct a healing for another person, you need to become the person. There needs to be this level of empathy where you literally can't just be you need to be them. So this thing that separates you and them starts to thin out until it's gone. It's like, oh wait, everything's one. So it's not really true that we're sending energy to people, transmitting and activating people. It's almost like the moment we're giving is the moment we're receiving, which is the moment of becoming one. So in many ways, if you have this love, this empathy, this connection, context isn't always needed. But of course, context will be important at certain steps of the way. The energy is a doorway. It's not always just a room. The room is about consciousness. And when you think of metacognition, consciousness is simply becoming aware of its own consciousness. And we created, oh, I dropped that. Hmm. 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 Is it me? Movies. Hmm. I could drop out. Hmm. Stop recording. Hmm. 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 Hey, didn't know what happened there.
So I don't know what happened, but we are back, fortunately.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is from your connection.
I think, Christina, you okay?
You're
Yeah.
complete?
Okay.
I have another question. I would just, it's me again. I would like to ask you, what was the most unusual experience you had with an energy and with a person?
I saw someone floating. I put my hands underneath the body and it wasn't on the ground. That was the strangest. But this is hard for me to answer because I've seen everything, and I think I'm just the beginning. I think a lot of people will see everything, so just wait for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, Pai. My name is Ina, and nice to meet you. I would like to ask you a question. I don't want to go into the whole depth of my story, but I lost my 11-year-old son 2 years ago in a very unexpected accident. Accidents and always unexpected, but he did everything right. He crossed the street on the proper light, and the driver did not stop, and she just flew by and she hit him. They were both crossing the street, my daughter and my son, but he happened to be in front of her. And for 14 days, we stayed in the intensive care unit. He had a lot of traumas, but his brain was very much damaged. And I saw how his brain was liquefying, and we decided to disconnect the machines, even though the doctors were encouraging us to disconnect much earlier. But you know, I waited, like I wanted to have a closure with him, and I actually did, which made me very peaceful and calm when I made a decision of letting him go.
Mm.
And we decided to donate his organs, so you know, it saved 3 other people's lives.
Wow.
And our family connected with people who got the organs. So it's a beautiful, I believe it's a beautiful story, because my son's life still continues in other people's lives, I would say. In those 2 years, every time when I was going to sleep, I was like, maybe I will see him or talk to him. And it never happened. It happened 3 times, but I never talked to him. I saw his image from the back, or him standing like far from the side. But is it possible to maybe connect with him, or maybe not me talking to him, but him talking to me? Or is it possible, or I shouldn't even like push it to become more like an addictive mom who wants to, pretty much my question, if it makes any sense.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear about your son or your child. Yeah, I have a 12-year-old, so I can only imagine what it's been like for you. You're really brave to have come out of this super intact and whole, and even grateful. I'll speak to this from essence. So let me draw this out. We have these different vibrations, and they mean something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they could be based in like colors. People think about the chakra systems. This is a bit indirect, but it should mean something to you and everyone else. If this is the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, the blue, the indigo, and the violet, when these come up in the energy process, they don't look like beings and entities, but they hold a lot. They hold meaning. The red could be interpreted sometimes as let me just speak it. I don't want to have to write things down. Handwriting's terrible. The colors speak messages. The red would be often dealing with the body, and people would realize the vibration, and it would be, everything I need is right here, right now. So that's just one example of a vibration. Now here, the highest in the crown, the violet, which would also be the middle, because the violet, when you map it out in terms of the mandala, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo. Indigo is a combination of blue and red. When you add white to indigo, then that's how you create violet, and that's why it's the color in the middle. The violet vibration speaks everything that happens for a reason. Everything that happens for a reason. When we live in time, and when we live as humans, that is one of the most difficult vibrations to hold. That everything is perfect. Everything's happening for a reason. I can feel and hear the part of you that's able to hold this, that, okay, you're not in resistance, you know, somehow if it happened, it's because it happened. All the other colors would speak from the language of wholeness, like everything is known. Every conversation we're having is a conversation with the one. The green would be, we are loved, we are always supported. The yellow would be, everything's always bringing us into a highest state of evolution. The orange would be, we're always birthing our highest potential. There could be different interpretations of these colors. So the mother's love is the deepest love. It's also one of the most difficult types of love, because there's such a human aspect to it. I'm glad we're bringing up the subject of death, because death is not really an event per se. It's a vibration. It's also a consciousness. It's not really the end of life. So spirit doesn't like to give in to the things that we think we want, because normally there's something more. And a lot of that would make sense on a timeline that is not of your choosing. The moment you come from this there's a love of the human mother, and there's the love of the divine mother. And the divine mother's love is really tough. It's quite sharp. That, you know, it kills a lot more often than it nurtures, because it usually knows what is best. So when a mother goes through the kind of trauma that you went through, there's always an invitation to actually go deeper, because you know, we're human and we're trying to do our best in being human, but we're not doing so well in matching the real vibration of the divine mother's love, which is requiring that humans grow up. So we're having to really let go. I remember what it was like when I first went back to the world, coming from my island experience. I was so detached that I imagined, what if I had children? Would I be okay if they just died like that? And at that moment of asking that, I knew that I was okay. But now I'm a father of a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I know I'm not going to be okay. But a part of me is going to be okay. That's the inhuman part of me. So what's happening now is we're not going to be just human. We're going to be someone like something else altogether, and we're saying goodbye not just to these specific humans we're you know, attached to and connected with. We're saying goodbye to aspects of humanity, because what is coming is something beyond human. There's something so much bigger, and we have to get past a lot of the stories that held us. So our people are important, but there's something much larger and deeper, so that later when we enter what's called the 4th dimension and the 5th dimension, whether in this life or after we pass here, we would actually enjoy them differently. We would be with them, and we would play, and we would party, and we would see them in their different states. And then we would be like, yeah. But sometimes you need to go through some of the lower elements in order to enjoy that. So be patient, and a lot of the journeys that are actually coming might bring you into conversation. Just don't expect that it be something you are used to, because when a spirit really speaks, it will speak via insight. It will be through like connecting many dots. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Pi. My name is Sharon. My questions come in very different forms. I think I live on different dimensions, because I have many gifts where I can see, as one said, death before it comes, or see things before it happens. That's one thing. I also feel people's sickness. I can be in a room and I can tell who is sick or who is not sick, or if they're having issues. People come to me in the last 3 years, people that I know, and if they're passing, they'll come to me and ask me to walk them to a certain point. So I see points of when people are dying, or when they're passing or going to the next dimension. They'll come and I'll walk them, and a couple hours they'll come, the family or whoever it is will say, oh, did you know so-and-so is passed? Or I'll get a message and I'll send them and said, you know, One of them was that he's okay, don't worry, you'll be okay, that type of thing. Energy, because that's what it is, it's all energy. Can one person have so many abilities to see and do so many things? And that can a person be that way?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. I really do see that we are entering into a whole different layering of consciousness, and some people had to come ahead of time in order to pave the way. And it's not always easy being you. It's not always easy to have this empathy or this level of connection. It's not easy to hold yourself when you can feel so much. It's good that you were able to stabilize this, because for other people to experience this would be the scariest thing, which means that they're not going to just be themselves. They would be others. So you're already answering your question. The fact that you were able to stabilize in this, which isn't always easy, means that you chose this. And you speaking it out now is just another level of you speaking it to me and to others that this is it. There's nothing else but this right now. On the level of gifting, this would be made pragmatic. There are so many people who do have these gifts that don't recognize it. Working with a lot of doctors, for example, there's so many practitioners out there who actually are so gifted, but they're not talking about it. They're scared of being judged because it's not allowed in their profession, and they don't want others to know. But this is actually a lot more common, and people are not outspoken. The intuitive, innate belief is there, but it's not social, it's not conventional. So we need to take away some of the shame and it's really just trust. It's allowing people to trust there's so much more out there. So just be you. Thank you.
Can I ask you? Okay, can I ask you one more question? Sometimes when I get the feeling or I know it, doesn't stop, the energy doesn't stop until I approach the person. Why do you have an answer to that? Like I could be in here yesterday, I'm going to bring it up, and our colleagues was talking about, can we heal in time? And I know we can. But if I didn't go to her and say to her, but we can do this, the feeling doesn't leave me, the energy doesn't leave me. Or if I feel somebody that is sick or a message is given to me from somebody else, and I'm going to say a message was given because I didn't know, I was just being, okay, this person has an ego and I'm not going to deal with it, but a message was given and I didn't give it to the person. So this actually came through perfectly for me. But it doesn't go until I give that message, or it stick with me and says, you have to give it. And I'm saying, but why do I have to give it? Because I might have my ego and said, okay, this person is this way, I'm not going to give it to them. Why is that energy staying with me and not releasing from me? Like my hands would get really hot, it just expands and they just keep on going. Like they just said, nope, you have to give it to them.
Okay, I used to have this as well. My body would just vibrate and I have to walk around, whether it be a bus or a boat or a train station, just to find who do I need to carry this through, which wasn't always easy. So a huge learning for me in carrying this work has something to do with finding the conditions where the healing would happen on its own. Because it is too heavy to try to bear this much responsibility. So learning how these conditions would rise up, either vibrationally, verbally, it means more or less contextualizing our work and ourselves in a way that there would be greater trust. And while we're on the way to doing that, and you guys are in the US and in these places in the world, there's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of overlapping, and there's not always a lot of trust. So practically your souls are choosing to be in that space to learn to not just heal single people, but to learn how to heal community. To create community is the larger process now. It's not so hard anymore to do healing for individuals, but to create larger sense of trust. I think if we learn how the vibrations rise and fall, we could create these conditions where energy consumption and competition could lead to energy conservation and energy conversion. When things are still in competition and there isn't really an equilibrium of energy, the conversion that doesn't take place. So there are certain conditions that need to be set. And I can't put that into words because there's so many. What would be the space where healing can happen on its own? So even on my part, I don't take responsibility over others. I'm not there to heal anyone. I'm there to create the conditions if there's willingness so that the healing will happen on its own. And when I accepted that, I was so freed up, so that there could be 100 people in the room. There could be one person in the room. If someone is going to take full responsibility, then it could happen. I am merely there to create the conditions where the healing could happen on its own.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming to look for you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But
Hi, bye. Thank you so much for everything. There's no words, the gratitude we have for this work, for your students that are our teachers now. So thank you so much. So I have two questions, and one of the questions is kind of twofold. So time. Is it possible, or I suppose anything is possible in the womb of the creation, right? Like you said. But is it how to even navigate, I suppose, the space of healing? Let's say, so I lost my mom when I was 10 years old to mental illness and suicide. And still healing. And also my brother. And also my daughter. Now I want her to be okay and not have this pass on through me to her. Now she's looking to have a baby. So the question is, do I know it's it's working, doing my work. Is it possible to go back in time somehow and have I don't know something that at least going forward my family can be free.
Yeah. Let's speak to that first. Based on our understanding of time, what we think is we can change the future. It's very hard to think that we can change the past, because the past is what has already happened, and the future is that which is yet to come. But this is exactly what is happening. There is a reversal of the process. As we listen to you and witness you, there's something about the body. There's something deep about the body that holds memory, that holds information, that holds wisdom. The body knows a lot more than the mind does. And so the body holds time. And the body holds these events. It stores these events. So where this could be manageable or even possible is you want to, all of you, all of us, we want to talk to all of our people through the body. I'm not reducing anything. I'm not materializing anything. Like, they're inside us. Like all these memories that are stored, they're still happening. So to answer your question, and it's a really good question, it's not just a good question, it's an important question. It's one of the questions. Do we have an ability to go back in time? Because it's still happening. But it's not linear time. So it's not really that one event, and it's not really just that one person. For you to really access time, it needs to go beyond. You need to see this from a universality. If you really want to speak to it, to receive it, and to speak to it in a universality, it needs to be a different, it's just a different dimension. So my advice is for you to speak to your body, to speak to the vibration of your body, the vibration of your name, the vibration of all that is stored, because only you know what you know. And when you speak to the body in the way I'm speaking to you now, to all of you, one of the big traumas is to think that we can't change the past. But time is relative. It's an illusion. The past is still happening. In a way, you may have gone through all of these and you're an adult woman, but you're still the small girl. You're still the little girl. So to speak about this interesting aspect of time, when people die, sometimes they come back to tell what happens afterwards. And most people who go through a near-death experience, they talk about the life of you. They talk about, wow, I experienced everything that I ever experienced in like a bubble. But there are people who die longer and talk about something even more mysterious. They instead of looking back at the life that they had just lived, what they experience is called the birth vision. It's the experience of seeing the whole life even before you lived it. Okay, like you haven't been you, but you actually had to choose to be you by seeing all of you before you were born. I don't think there's a difference between birth and death. I think that the birth vision and the life of you are actually one womb space. So we're all children of people, and some of us are parents of others. But it's actually, here's the deepest truth. It can't get deeper than this. We think there are many people, and we think there are many days, and we think there are many places, but there's actually only one consciousness. There's only one room. There's only one day. There's only one being pretending there's many. We had to create this so we could experience parts of the absolute and of the one, so that we could experience love uniquely through each and every one. Whatever is given to us, we have to respond to it. Whatever point in time, past and future. You cannot go beyond that truth. That is the biggest truth. So the people, our people, all of these people are the parts of the universe that chose them. So you right now are the part of the universe that's all of us that's choosing you, and we will never be you again unless we keep going back to you. So I'm the part of the universe that's choosing me, but you're actually me choosing me. So when you think about all these people, you're actually them that chose to be them. And for you to be them, you have to be them, but you didn't choose to be them, you're choosing you. There are layers of complexity underneath that, where you actually then, to experience them, through them, you would need to just go into a much deeper empathy. And sometimes someone needs to die for you to learn that, the lessons that they are giving. So these are angles. But the first thing that I spoke is maybe the most useful. The answer is yes. We can go there, but it's wrong to say that we can go back there, because in truth, and I've seen many people experience this, we're not going back there because it's not back there, it's actually still here. All of it is coexisting now. We just can't experience all of it at the same time because it's going to be too confusing. So we created time so that there would be a story and a sequence. So we're interested in energy because there is a way in which you can access all of it at any point at your choosing, if and when you're ready for it. So there will be opportunities to speak to it without the literal having to go back to that day. Just the awareness that it's here, and you can choose to speak to it so that a transformation can happen. It's up to you. It's up to how you want to hold the message, like in and through you. It's a good question.
Thank you. My second question was actually connecting to body. I have been experiencing this like in my dreams. I'm waking up essentially dying. I'm experiencing this like experiencing my body being like this molecules vibrating, and sometimes this anxiety and fear. And it's like I shared my dreams, like I was like in one dream I was shot, and another dream like just like intense like fear. And that's, and is that in some way a form the reactivations of the energy of the kundalini?
So when I was young, when I was really young, I used to pass out, and then I would always experience this extreme anxiety, and it would be accompanied with this feeling that I'm going to die, like this is my last day. And I was so scared. I was maybe up until I was 13 or 14, 15. So something happened where the energy approached me slowly, but it was fast enough when I was sleeping that I couldn't avoid it. So because I was so scared of it for the longest time, I thought it was going to kill me. That one time I decided to just allow it to pass through me. And when it did, it was like the smoke passed through, and suddenly I was in the universe. That was the first time I didn't resist it. And then after that, it never happened to me before. So there was a famous French philosopher named Albert Camus, and he said, when you conquer death, anything is possible. So I think death is really just a threshold. And when we pass through death, something dies. It's the fear of death that dies. At the other end of death is the universe. So we can just hold that metaphor. Death is the universe. And if we're okay with that, we would explore the universe. I think you're in the threshold. Pass through it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Can I ask one more question? The energy, the Kundalini energy, even though it's this Kundalini energy, are we all transmitting, or is it all our own unique frequency that just us transmits, or it's different for everyone who services, or is it the same for everybody?
Yeah, this is baby. They just woke up, so you'll hear baby sounds. Okay. Kundalini is not it's not just an energetic signature, it's not just a thing. A lot of people speak about it as if it was something static, like something you can hold. For me, Kundalini is really just a change. Okay, to generalize it, it means something is changing, usually fast. So when it hits you, it means that you were on the way to change. So Kundalini is, if it's not just a thing, it's a process. It's a process of transformation. So in that way, the transformation would always be unique. You want to enjoy it because once it happens, when you stabilize, you don't have to go through what you went through. And usually when that transformation first occurs, and that could be within the span of months or a year or years, it's just a moving from one place to another. So it's one thing to try to look for the signature, the imprint, but it's situated, meaning it's really more of a process. And what would make that unique would be each person is built differently, so that when you're moving from one place to the next, like for example, when you witness the music, when you design the music that would hold a space, the power or the change isn't inside the pieces of the music. The actual transformation is in the transition from one vibration to the next. When you move from slow to fast, or high and low, low, high, the energy is in the space in between. So Kundalini in that way is the space between stages and states of awareness. And the space between states would always be different. It would be different day to day. It would even be different place to place. So where it finds you at the exact moment where it's supposed to happen, that would always be unique. So what this would do is it would not allow us to keep repeating the same. Even as space holders, we're not going to be given easy instruction manuals, like A leads to B and then this goes to that. That's mechanical. Energy is not, machine-like. It's really complex. It's going to hold like so many layers that's not going to be visible to our senses. So trust is the key. You almost always need to be there as if you know what you're doing, that you're coming from a place that knows. There's a difference between the statement like how is everything connected, as opposed to just saying the statement everything is connected. The second would be more of an attitude where, okay, I know everything's connected. I may not understand how it's connected, but it's connected. And just being able to hold that allows the connections to be there. What matters with us human beings is we like to ask, like, how is it connected? If you're meant to know, it will come to you. But if it's not meant to come yet, then just say it's connected. It's good. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think we need to analyze Kundalini so much, because it's a movement. It's a transition. And if we try to make that static, the thing that will stay stable would be the science. When you go into the science, that can stabilize into a systematicity, but energy itself is so vast that it doesn't like to be systematized. It's going to be perfect exactly as it will at any moment that you trust.
Thank you. One more. Who wants more? One, two. Okay. Pais, it's okay. Two more people.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much. My name is Sheer. And first of all, I want to appreciate your journey because it came to me now, and I feel like it's very piece of the puzzle that I was looking for. For the last 4 years, the energy came to me and came through me, and I allow it. And I felt a lot of energy, and like it's come naturally, you know. Sometimes I sit with a friend and she tells me that she want to make a change. 5 minutes after, the energy just come and start to do a healing. Yeah, so this is one story, but I have like sometimes I just walk and I feel like I need to move my hands and stuff like that. So my question is also it's kind of related to her. She asked before, but I didn't understand completely, and I feel like I want more clarity. Should I, because sometimes I don't know what to do. Like, of course, I feel my personal view is like if the energy come to me and it's going through me, even to a person, I just allow it to happen. But I'm curious if should I ask people, should I notify, like, of course, if it's one-on-one, it's more easier. But if it's like someone that, I don't know, just there and I feel like my hand's going, so I'm curious, like, what should I do? What is the, I don't know, right way, but like, what is the,
Okay, so the body knows more than the mind on a certain level. The body deals with precognition. So when you work with the body, information is implicit, meaning there's no need to translate things into words. Now, verbal language is explicit, which means we need to translate what the body knows into what the mind could know. So language isn't just a personal knowing. Language exists so that we could know things from like a shared space. The answer to your question is situational. There are some people who don't need to know explicitly. They would actually favor not having to translate things because language can limit meaning in a sequential way. The body can handle information non-sequentially. The difference there being, is it going to be one at a time or all at once? The body can handle information all at once, which means, you know, it's the difference between analog and digital technology. In the past, we used to deal with Sony Walkmans and, you know, cassette tapes, but now we're dealing with digital technology where things are happening all at once rather than sequentially, one at a time. There's something about the human that's still sequential because we're still using language. So you can imagine, let's say, okay, I got to read this book in a second, but it's 1,000 pages. There's something inside of us that can download and resonate and hold information that doesn't need to read the book. It's like, I know the essence. Sometimes you would meet a person, it's like, I know you. I don't know you, but I know you. I don't need to know the details. So when we can speak the all at once, a lot more can come through. And sometimes people will be in that space. But sometimes you will meet people who will need context. You need to discern, do they need some information that can open the space? And so that's the difference between trust and insight. Trust is knowing before you know. It's like, I don't know why I need to go there or why I need to talk to that person. I just know. That's something the body would know a lot more than the mind. But then the insight would start to see the connections when you trusted. But there will be many places in the world where people need information and then they would trust. and then insight would come, and then that would allow them to trust even more. People experiencing crisis or people who are already going through change, people who are resonating don't need the words as much. I don't know what the percentage would be where you are at. If you are good in that way and people trust you because they know that you're already doing this work, they will surrender and they would just let go. But if you haven't set up the work yet and people don't know that this is about you and then you hold this dimensionality, they will ask for just enough information. So I think we need to develop both techniques, the implicit and the explicit, because clarity, it's like people deserve to be clear. And sometimes words do that. Discernment means knowing, is there trust here? Because if a person doesn't trust you, you can feel like, I'm being blocked here. Sometimes we judge ourselves. Is it something wrong with me? No, it's because they don't trust you. So we need tools to open the pathway so that the energy would be, like flowing in both ways. But sometimes we just have to walk away if they're really not. The difference is some people are curious, some people are open, some people are ready. And there's separate set of tools for people who are just curious. Some people are closed, some people are curious. Some people are open, and then if you're really going to go into it, it's because they're ready. So if they're not yet ready, if they're just open, then just hold back a little bit. If they're just curious. So when you do group work, what gets complicated is sometimes you'll be in a room where some people are closed, some people are curious, some people are open, some people are ready. You need to die to be able to hold that kind of space, because it's scary, like some people are resistant, some people are just all the way there, taking off already. So vibration, music, words, you need to hold some kind of concert where all of the senses, like you want to be strong and you want to be soft, that you enter the space and then they're like, oh, okay, I can trust her. So how do you speak in this way that you can speak to everyone universally and they feel like, wow, it's like you were speaking to me, like me. And then everyone's saying, no, she was speaking to me. It's like, wow, she can speak to everyone as if you're speaking as one. You need to kind of order the mind, restructure the brain that can allow that to happen. It takes a lot of humility and a lot of confidence to kind of do that. To bring the energy of birth and death at the same time. I don't think we need to worry about this, because I feel like the world is becoming readier and readier. We're inching our way closer to a deeper level of trust, because it feels like in many places it's so messed up that there's no other choice but to kind of go there. It just doesn't seem like it, because very few people are holding that kind of space. So in the beginning, it's usually just more difficult to contextualize what we do. But once some people experience, and then more and more people experience, the rest is history. You just have to walk into the room, sit down, sometimes even just press the play button, and people just go there. And you're like, wow, am I even doing anything here? It's just doing itself. Then you're lucky, So good luck with that. Have fun. You want to enjoy that.
Wow. Thank you so much. Hey, I have a question about self-activation, but I don't know if you're gonna talk with us or yeah. So one more question about self-activation. Like, anyway, my hands moving and healing myself, but so like, how does it work basically?
The body is a language, and when we start to speak, some people go into light language. There are scientific explanations of that in terms of brain lobes. But when the body speaks, when the body moves, it's still a language. So the best that I can explain this, when you go through the energy, sometimes there's two of you. I've watched some people go into the cosmos, into the universe, super deep, but they're in our retreat center and they actually need to take their flight back home. So very often there's a strange thing where you're so deep, but you're also thinking the way you're thinking, where, okay, I need to take care of the kids and I need to, isn't that interesting that, you know, you're still you, but there's a part that's not you. It's almost schizophrenic. I remember a session that I held for a woman a couple of months ago where she literally felt herself become the wise old woman, but at the same time, she was like a 5-year-old. And then the wise old woman's like, oh, you know so much, come on. And the 5-year-old's like, I can't catch up. Authentically, she was both. And the 5-year-old couldn't hurry up because she's 5 years old. And the wise old woman, she was just like, but I already know it. So you want to be kind to yourself. And when the self-activation happens, you want to recognize that the wise old woman is talking to the 5-year-old. So there's a part of your body that already knows. And then whether that be automatic or you just go ahead and do it, the signals are there. So imagine that these mudras, these kriyas are like letters of the alphabet, and you're just like formulating sentences. I find language really interesting. You know, it's like when you speak these words to your mom, to the baby, to this, how do you know what you're going to say? So even as you utter the first word, you already completed the sentence. How are you even constructing the sentences when you live in time and you haven't even constructed the thing? You know, how are you able to do that? It means that there's a part of you that lives outside of time, that lives in space, inner space, outer space. And so when your body activates in that way, there's a part that even though it's just starting, it's already happened. It's already happened. You know, you were finished even before you started. So when you're in that level of activation, sometimes an idea comes, write it down. You're gonna lose that once you're not there. Like a dream is so easily forgotten. You want to learn how to move energy, store energy. Translating that into clarity is really important, actually. So God and the goddess are always trying to speak to us. We just don't know how to listen. So develop sign systems with it. It's not necessarily something you would learn from anyone. And as it comes to you, I normally have like a whole bunch of notebooks. Some are more messy, some are more ordered. So I know when science is speaking to me, when philosophy or culture or music or spirit is talking to me, I know when to scribble, when to write neatly in really ordered way, because I know doctors and scientists will be looking at this. Develop compartments in your library mind so that you know where to place things. And when the body moves in this way, see it as an organizational thing. It's usually easier for people to see, okay, I need chaos. I need to destroy all these habits and old things. But when the energy refines itself, you realize that you can organize your room. Like imagine this is my room. These are ideas in my room. And you know, even when you're listening to me, you're probably experiencing like information moving around. Like there are a bunch of words, but there's so much context that's finding order and organization. So the movements help a lot in organizing. Even psychologists have found out that the way children arrive at concepts and words had to begin with movement. The baby was absorbing a lot by moving across the space, sensing the space, walking around the space. It allows them to arrive at words and concepts and meaning. And when you tell a child, okay, you need to behave, stop moving, be a good boy, be a good girl, we're actually limiting their mind. We're colonizing their mind. So there's a reason why we're freeing up the movements, because movement is actually a way of thinking. It just doesn't seem like it because it's not three-dimensional sequential thinking. It's non-linear all at once thinking. So there are scientific explanations that would prove that the energy is actually revisiting the baby brain. the baby mind, and the baby brain is not stupid. The baby brain knows a lot more because it is coming from dimensionality. So to go back to the baby brain and the baby body means freeing up the movement, like physical movement. Kinesthesia is a way of organizing. It's pre-verbal thought, which is non-linear, non-sequential thinking. It's a lot more powerful, like in a way. So keep developing that. Amazing.
Wow. More than expected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last one.
Thank you, Pai. We are fully aware that you have 12 hours time difference, so for you it's after
good.
midnight.
I'm super good.
Thank you.
Hi, Pai. My name is Christina. I don't even know why I'm trying to ask, but here we go. So the past few days, just kind of realized that I was thinking that I'm a trusty person. And it's coming to me that I'm not. And since you start talking, I cried a lot and about everything. I'm not that. I'm not crying usually. And every time you said trust was triggering me back. And I don't know why. And I don't know who to ask. And where to go to find out. I just don't understand what's going on. And I just went a bit inside of me right now while you were talking, and every time I was hearing trust was like, you know, like a button pressed. And I realized that I kind of, mostly of all of my life, I never trust, not even as a child. I didn't trust there is a God, there is universe or nothing.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I feel you. You have to then now go into a conversation inside you that also is in conversation with everyone in your life that ever told you that you're not good enough. That's the root. Anyone who's ever told you you're small, that don't be unlimited, don't be big, they programmed you to doubt and to be a skeptical person. So what you're speaking now is huge, because the realization of this already helps you to understand like all your patterns. Like all your patterns were rooted in this one message that you're not good enough. So everything would change from here on. This is your fulcrum. This is your crux. This is your turning point. You would have to use this portal to speak to all of them, not with regret or anger, but just thank you. But I'm done with that story.
I'm still doubting that.
Yeah, it's gonna take time. It's going to be a process. This is what I find really interesting. You can even trust doubt. That's the most ridiculous thing. Trust, even doubt. And what you're speaking is the story of many, of almost everyone, actually, because most of us had the same parents and had the same cultures that were, at a time of hardship when people didn't have the right support systems. So you cannot become a good therapist or a healer if you don't go through this, because you won't understand the mechanisms inside others. That's why this won't be shortcutted. You want to also understand this from a deep place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.
One more question which came up a few times in the trainings, as you know, and we, Sandra and myself, give our answer to that. The question, what about pregnant women coming to sessions? So when it's time to facilitate, what's the saying? So on one side, we say, yes, everybody and every human being is welcome because the energy is benevolent to the process. At the same time, we feel there's a word of caution. And so we would like to ask you on what to give your insight on that.
Not an inner dance. Like the most powerful experiences I've seen actually come from pregnant women, either first, second, or third term, or trimester. We've never said no, and the process actually allows women to prepare for the actual birthing process. If women aren't able to let go of their fear before the actual birthing, that would show up in the contractions and expansions. So you want to teach them to hold the waves of going up and down, going bigger and smaller. Women really go through this anyway, through the menstruation period. Menstruation is very much like the birthing process, and watching all these bodies exhibit the labor, like the expansion and contraction that happens in inner dance, it's exactly the same as giving birth. So we want to trust the body. That's just me anyway. We've never had problems. We've always said yes, and the mother herself holds that confidence. So if the mother is confident and we're not, there's something wrong. You can take this even to a less obvious stance. The one giving birth is not the mom, it's the baby. The baby is the midwife. The baby is actually the one to hold the waves. So if we're not able to trust the mother, we can at least trust the baby. So never say no. In any cases, there's never an instance where we would say no to any disease, disorder, mental, physiological. It's always good because the waves that we're introducing is non-invasive. It's something that's already inside to begin with. So what wave needs to come will come. It's always perfect.
Thank you, Pa. Hello. So you recommend it in non-sequential music, not in the sequential music.
Okay, so where the energy we hold matches the birthing is in the music and in the inner dance is contraction and expansion. So when we're helping a pregnant woman release fear, usually when a contraction is happening, that's when you hold the expansion. But to answer your question, let's say if we have control and we've got the music and hold, if an expansion is happening, you can bring in small contractions. It doesn't have to be too big. Whether that be through sequential or simultaneous music, it would help. So it's knowing the science and the language of contraction and expansion. When an expansion is happening, put in the contractions. When the contractions are there, bring the expansion. That's simultaneous. It's not sequential. That's not about the music. That's about the event. So the music would counteract what's happening on the physical plane.
Thank you very much, Pai, for your availability, for your wisdom, for the sharing.
This is actually one of the deepest Zoom meetings I've been in. So there's something about this group, these people over there, and this situation that is very magical, as always. I'm really glad to have been pulled into this this meeting. I want to show you what's happening here. Cute. Okay, maybe that inspires the journey that's gonna be there. So I'm looking forward to hearing feedback and how it works. Thank you. Have a good one. I'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, see you. And
Okay.
we'll talk about Germany as well.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
Okay.
bye. Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
Love to
Bye.
everyone.
Bye. Good
Bye.
night.